Welcome to Slow and Steady, the podcast where you get to follow along as we build products in public. Each week we'll give you an honest peek into our lives as we share our struggles, our wins, and everything in between. I'm Benedict, and I'm feeling a little bit distracted today.
And I'm Benedicte. Today is March 21st. This is episode number 174, and I'm feeling pumped.
Ooh, that's pumped. Yes, let's go.
Pumped. Yes. I mean, it's hopefully not short-lived because February we were sick. Then I had my concussion. And I don't know. I just think I got my normal, what I would consider my normal energy back. And I just feel ready to get things done. And also been more strict with taking my phone out of the room and doing some proper focus sessions. I went to a cabin with a friend. She was like, "Oh, do you want to come up?" And I was like, "I need to work. It's not that often I work weekends anymore, but I was behind and just needed to get some stuff done." And she was like, "It's fine. I need to do some maintenance on the cabin and stuff." So I got to sit in beautiful surroundings and get a little bit ahead again. And yeah. And then Prune Your Follows passed 1,000 users.
Nice.
So I was like, yeah. And then I was mentioned on that podcast that you sent me where they're like, "We're so impressed." And I was like, "All right." So that felt good. But
yeah, that sounds really nice. I also enjoyed the first episode of Data in the Wild last week. Did you record a second one already? I don't.
Yeah, we recorded one actually yesterday, lunch hour European time, because it was with Pierre from Scraping Bee.
I missed that, unfortunately, but I should check out the recording, I guess.
Yes, you should. And I feel that, went even better. It's always with the first one, even if I've done it so many times, I was nervous. Oh my God. Just because it's different intro, different setup, different everything. So, but I feel and Pierre is always nice to have on. He's a good guest. And Monica is also a good guest. It's nice to have friends on.
True.
And I just got this Google photo memory of photos from Athens. I think it was yesterday. So it's been 1 year since I went to that Athens trip that you didn't end up going. And that's where I met Pierre. Yeah. And I've already interviewed him 3 times.
Nice. Yeah, right. He was on Slow and Steady once. He was on the Data Show and he was on your live streams, right? So that's cool.
Yeah. So I feel I don't know, now it feels so much longer than 1 year ago where I went to Athens, then I made some microconf, and then I also went to London to visit my dad, I think, because I got some photos from that. And it feels, I don't know, people are still worried about COVID. It feels so long ago. And then when I got that memory, it's just, it's only been a year. That was last spring.
Krista of our userless team blew my mind this week by mentioning that 2023 is already a quarter over.
Yeah, we don't want to talk about that.
I'm like, what? We just started. How can it be already 1 quarter done? I mean, almost, not quite, but almost.
I feel that's been a theme for the show since the New Year's, because you were like, "It's been week 3 already," and now we're like, "Oh, it's been month 3 already."
Yeah, it's time flies. It's a cliche these days, but it's just true. I'm blown away how things just move forward, and you're they're trying to get work done, and time flies.
But there's some kind of cliche saying where it's the days are long but the years are short or something. But then again, I feel Athens was 1,000,000 years ago. So I don't know. Time is weird. It can be all of the things at the same time.
True. Yeah.
But yeah. But also I just feel being a part of the community, we brought James, and now I just realized I've never said his last name. Do you know how he says his last name?
I don't know.
I probably should know from his. Well, anyway, it's James from Indie Bytes, and he has a podcast editing company called Pod Panda, and we brought him on to edit the Data in the Wild episodes. And that was a really good choice because then like he can get it over the finish lines, which is always nice when you have a little too much going on, which I never do. And that just made me dream of like having a little, like a small content team, like somebody that could like edit video and audio and text, and then also somebody who could like help remix and reuse all the content. Because by now, like I have so much like raw content, and I think that it could be used, and then I think it could benefit from being reused, because especially the streams, like, it's like maybe like every fourth is a good one, and like being able to take snippets from that, and even from the ones that aren't like super good, they're always like little nuggets that are good, and like having somebody help on that would be really, really cool. And then also, if you have like, I'm dreaming of this scenario where there's like so much reuse that like doing a stream once a month would be enough, right? Because there would be enough content coming out anyway, so that I can like rest on my laurels. Is that what it's
I think it
called?
is. Yeah.
No, that would be, or I could do it myself, but like it would be great to like have a little bit of a team to be able to do that. But so sometime in 2023, maybe I'll have like a tiny team to help me out, because then I could sell more.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, that's basically what Krista and Katarina are doing at Userlist. Krista's doing a lot of editing and even some content writing, but they're editing this podcast, and Katarina is mostly doing like promotion and like remixing content and repurposing the content and just spreading the word about the content, because like
the newsletters are really good, where she's like, it's a new intro, but then she's resurfacing kind of what probably you would have thought be like, oh, that's old content, but like, not everybody read it when it came out.
Right, exactly. And I think it's just so useful. And she's taking care of posting it to social media and just like promoting the content, because it's so easy to forget. I mean, similar to building products, right? Building products is only half, or maybe even less, maybe a third of the thing.
I don't know, a 10th by now.
A 10th, yeah. But you need to do the marketing and the promotion and like get people's eyes on it. And it's the same for the content. Just writing it and publishing it, sure, I mean, Google will pick it up eventually, but it'll only get super effective when you start sharing it and people link to it and people read it and share it and all of that. And I'm super grateful that we have both of them on the team to help us with that, because for the longest time we really sucked at the remixing and the editing and the promotion part of it.
I think it's something that you probably could learn, but also in a way it helps that there's new eyes on the content, because you maybe made something with a specific use case in mind, or like thinking about something in specific, but then when somebody else kind of reads that blog post, maybe they have a different, or watches the stream or whatever content is, like maybe they have a different connection, and then they can put it in a new context that then makes somebody who didn't read it with, the first time around when it was introduced in a different way, is then interested in it. Yeah. Or just like things are happening in the industry or in the world, and you're like, oh, like we have something that can well, no, I don't have the words. We have a piece of content.
Some related content, right? Yeah.
Yeah, something that it's still relevant, but it's sometimes hard when you've made it yourself to like see all of those possibilities as well. Like, even if I took the time, I could have done some of it, and you could probably have done some of it, but then having somebody, come in with, a fresh eyes on it is helpful. And also, especially from the streams, like I find it hard to, what snippets are fun. Like I find I'm not the audience, so.
True. Yeah. But I also don't underestimate just like having the not having to spend the time, right? I mean, sure, in theory we can all do all things ourselves or learn how to do everything ourselves, but a day is only so long, a week is only so long, and as we just noticed, a year is only so long. You could very well be doing different stuff, or like producing more content, or selling stuff, or working on a new feature for your product, or whatever. And this took me a while to learn, or to just internalize that. Yes, I'm an indie founder, or we are an indie team, or whatever, or a small business. Yes, we are very hands-on, but that doesn't mean we have to do everything ourselves. And that's a learned thing. Like, for the longest time, I figured editing this podcast was good use of my time. But now that I don't have to do it anymore, it's not that I miss it, and I can do other stuff. And same for customer
there
support
are these
and so on. Right?
Cool audiograms out there that you didn't.
Yeah, I didn't have to do myself,
it just
and someone took care of it, and it was someone's job and focus and like main or like primary thing to do this stuff, where a lot of the stuff, like for us, especially for me as a developer working on a product, it's just like second order priorities, maybe even third or fourth or fifth. So that's the stuff that easily gets thrown under the bus eventually, right? When things get hectic. So there's something to be said about delegating these tasks, and not having to do themselves.
But what I also like now is that there's so many tools where the person doesn't really have to be like a professional. Like, right. You can edit video now. You can even edit video in Canva. I tested it out, and it's super good, right? And you can edit things in Descript. Podcasts are really, it's well suited for Descript. And I think having the people helping out using those tools so that you can step in, if they're contracting, then you're not, like, there can be a time where they can't do the job, or like they don't want to work with you anymore, or things happen, and having it be done in the tools where I could step in and like do it when needed, I think is something that I want to try to make happen, because then I will feel more relaxed about like using different people or testing out new people, because I know that, okay, in a pinch I can go in and use it. But if suddenly they want to like edit and like, I don't know, some like super fancy like video editing software or something that cost me like $600 just to download and another 6 weeks to learn, then I'd feel more hesitant. And I think now there are people like coming up that want to do these kinds of jobs where it's more about kind of getting it done and getting it good enough, but it's not going to be like the most professional video in the history of YouTube videos, right? It's
true.
The content.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be, right? I mean,
yeah.
And even like, I wouldn't even worry too much about the tools, because in the end, it doesn't matter what tools they use. If they want to use like that super fancy video editing tool to do the job, sure, why not? As long as you on your own have a way to like step in and do it like a bare bones version or whatever. I know for a fact that Dan, who did editing for this podcast before Krista took over, I think he was editing the podcast in Final Cut Pro, which is like a fancy video editing software, which is probably not necessarily the right tool for the job, but he was familiar with it. It did the job for him. And when he quit, I think Krista's now using Audacity or something like that. So I don't know.
So you don't even know. That's the beauty of it.
And
okay, I'm gonna think about my stance on that.
And if I have to step in when they take a week off or so, I'm doing it in GarageBand. So 3 different tools getting the same job done. And yes, maybe
I think it's a little bit different with video though, because you kind of want to be able to export, like, and then suddenly you want like a Google Shorts version of like 5 seconds in there, and then you might have to move some things around. Like you want to be able to kind of go in and do some little changes.
But again, does the tool matter that much?
Yeah.
As long as you have a tool to get the job done, I think everything else is kind of
that's true.
unimportant.
That's true. I'm going to think about this. Yeah. But it's not going to be right now, but maybe by the end of 2020. We'll see what the future holds. If there's going to be a lot more content production, I'm going to need some help. So if that is you, dear listener, let me know.
Yeah. I feel like this is an underappreciated skill. I don't know, thing to think about for content producers in general. I feel like a lot of people get on the content treadmill and then keep running and running and running and don't realize that they are burning themselves out and eventually just stumble and fall off the thing. And
that's why I've been so hesitant about
and then struggle to build a team.
Yeah, and that's why I've been so hesitant about selling content, because if you end up with kind of the regular content, that then also the prices are going down. But still, with like technical content, like they pay a premium price for knowing that it's correct, and like so it's worth it, and then you can get help, But if you are delivering articles for or like videos, kind of like the mass or I don't know, where you don't have to be a subject matter expert to kind of make them. There is a competition now, and the prices, are going down because a lot more people are able to do it now with the new tools. And then I think, it's easy to just like make and like you have to make a lot to make the money, and then it's like, yeah.
True. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see how long I'll be doing this. We'll see how the price. I see how the prices evolves.
Cool. Anything else you've been working on in the past week? Or thinking about or considering?
Yeah, so for Prune Your Follows and also / content that I have sold, I am exploring semantic search. So using OpenAI's embeddings and vector search, which I don't understand, but I've made it work.
Nice.
But it feels like now we're at the time where the tools are there, where you don't really have to understand everything. It's like using any API, right? You have to do some things to please the API, and you get results back. But it's been fun because I've been so I took all of the people. I've just been demoing it because you kind of have to pay. So I don't want to run all the accounts of Prune Your Follows through OpenAI right now, because I only have I'm only allowed to do like 20 a minute or something, 20 a minute. So what you do is that every account you create a embedding, which is this like weird just numbers, and I think it represents the account, or like you make a string of the information about a Twitter account, and then that string is kind of then gets this embedding, and I think it kind of represents then that string like in like the knowledge that OpenAI has, like some kind of like knowledge. It's like I don't understand. It's like a bunch of numbers anyway, and then you take your search query and you create an embedding out of that as well. And then you do a vector search to see like how far they are from each other. So I'm guessing like all of these numbers is saying that, this embedding is part of like a lot of different places in this like knowledge graph or whatever. And then it looks at your query that's also embedded, and then tries to find out which one matches most or closest to all of these other numbers or something like that. But all I do is create embedding, vector search. And I've been testing it out, and it's kind of fun because then you can do things like Norwegians, and it will actually show me accounts that don't have the word Norway, or like it might just say it in Norwegian, because that's been fun. Like having a second language is extra fun, because then I say Norwegians and I can see that it matches people that have location set to Norge, which is Norway in Norwegian. And I did the same thing for Germans, and it would like, it would hit people who had then even just Hamburg. They didn't even have like Germany in their location. And it kind of knows that, okay, Hamburg is close to Germany in all of this knowledge graph thingy that the AI uses.
Yeah.
And then on Thursday, we're going to try to take it a step further and then do more like this account. And then I can create a string in the same way as I've done when I've created embeddings for every account. I mean, I've already have the embeddings for every account. So then you can do more like this account, and then we'll use the embedding for one account and then try to do this vector search towards all the other accounts and then see what comes up. If it actually feels like it's similar. Because that's the bad thing about this, because you look at the results and you're like, but I have no idea like why it's matching. Because when you do fuzzy search, you can like mark out the word that it matched, even though it's not completely the word.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like it's when I'm like using the UI, I would have loved semantic search to have something similar where you could say like, oh, we're matching this part of the string in a way. But I don't think that's
not how
like,
AI works, right?
No, it's a magic box, right?
But it's super interesting. Yeah, I haven't really thought about that. I mean the thing I'm struggling with all of this stuff usually is like, yes, vector search, awesome. And it's also, I mean, that's something I learned at university. Like, it's not super complicated. But how to get the vector is like the thing that blows my mind. Like, I don't even know.
Yeah, I don't understand. Like this embedding things, just like it's just a bunch of numbers. It just
right.
What does it even represent? Do you know what it represents? The embedding?
I don't know. No, I don't know.
No. And I felt good because I was reading, because I didn't really understand. Like I was looking at different things, but then I remembered that Swizek, that I know from Twitter, had written like, oh, semantic search in an afternoon. He'd written a little blog post exploration on semantic search. And he was like, I don't really understand what an embedding is, but it seems to be working. And I was like, good. It's like, I don't either. So.
Right. I mean, in the end, I feel like, and I might be wrong about this, but thinking about it now is Postgres full text search feature is also working in a similar way, I guess. I think in the end, it's also doing like a vector search or like vector comparison, because it's also computing a text search vector or something like that. So it's somehow taking the input and like mapping it to numbers, I guess, that then get represented in the multidimensional vector space thingy. I don't know.
But I guess that the benefit of using then OpenAI is that then you get that knowledge that Norwegians is connected to Norge, which you wouldn't have if you just had your own data, because then you would have to do those mappings yourself and kind of feed that into the machine.
yeah, that's true.
So we'll see how it comes out, because then I'm thinking, okay, when you've unfollowed like a lot of people, then we could do a, more like the people you've already unfollowed feature.
Or now that you've unfollowed a lot of people, why don't you follow these people?
Yes. There's possibilities. But what have you been working on? We've been heavily talking about me being so...
that's in the end, it's not that much. At least it doesn't sound like much. I mentioned last week that I was super tired and things were slow for like Monday and Tuesday. Luckily, that didn't extend through the rest of the week. So the rest of the week was actually pretty productive. And I got back into building the backend for the reporting feature. And I tried to tackle tracking totals over time. And it turns out that's way more complicated than just tracking deltas over time. Like, in the end, we want to know like how many messages you send at a given point in time, and how many messages in total. But for that, like we first start to track like the days we are sending a message or the moments we're sending a message, and then just summing those up. So we get like a list of days, and we have one message on day 1, one message on day 3, 2 messages on day 5, something like that. So in total, is that 5 messages? So that part is kind of easy, but if we only rely on the deltas, like how many messages were sent on a specific day, that has 2 implications. One, we have to keep all the data forever, because if we start deleting data, then suddenly the total at the end will go down. And for, let's say, a campaign that's running for 5 years, to get the total, we'd have to look at data for the entire 5 years. So this becomes a little bit of a problem. So I was trying to figure out, can we just keep the total count over time and just store it in the database as well? And that also sounds simple, because then you just sum it up and increase it by 1 when you send a message and stuff like that. But it gets trickier when you realize that the way we're processing data and the way stuff happens in our system isn't strictly linear. So we might be this is worst case scenario, but let's imagine our background processing queue goes down for a day. And we're not processing, because we're processing it in parallel, we're not guaranteeing order, because each job might pick the last job and then take a little longer, and then one is faster than the other, whatever. Long story short, we can't guarantee processing order. So that means that in an extreme case, we could process a message sent today that would increment the counter by 1. And then we'd process a message that was sent yesterday that also increments the counter by 1. But in the naive implementation, it increases it for yesterday, but we already have a value for today. So a change yesterday doesn't only affect the number yesterday, it also affects the number of today, and so on. So that means instead of just updating 1 row, we have to update a lot more based on the old numbers. So you see where I'm getting at?
Yeah, but is this where you need another type of data store? The ones that these more analytic software are using, aren't they using isn't there other data, because you're using a Postgres database, right?
Yeah, sure. We could use I think the thing you're talking about is a column-based store, I guess. I'm not entirely sure that would solve the thing. I mean, they are a little bit more efficient in querying a lot of data over time instead of doing those roll-ups, what we do.
Because Pierre was talking about time series, because they were also wanting to do better better analytics, save more analytics, and then be able to do summations and things like that. And then he was like, a data store that is better for time series analytics, which I've heard about before, but because I need that for POW at some point, because it's still alive. And I'm and there's this elk or cabana or something. I've been, when I was working for another company, there were these kind of databases that were specialized on just saving a lot of kind of event data, or a lot of, and then it's faster to summarize. I need to learn more about this. Since I know
there are for example, there's timescale DB, which is kind of that on top of Postgres. And to be fair, some of the stuff I'm building these days is basically doing what timescale is doing as well. But we made a deliberate choice to not add more database technologies to our stack at this point in time. So yeah, we're sticking with Postgres. And the good news is I got a proof of concept working that just does this, updating many things at once. And it seems to be working. And I was super happy and thought it was done, but then more things I didn't consider. Turns out it's a little bit more complicated than I imagined, but it's not impossible to solve, and it will still be fast, and I think it will scale really well once we get it done. It's just that problem of learning about all the things that might be a problem and then working around them. But hopefully I've discovered everything by now. So now it's more a matter of actually implementing some clean code to do this instead of the mess that I made to get where I'm right now.
Know the feeling. Yeah, I should maybe not have interrupted you there before you were at your final point, but I just find this fascinating now that I talk like with data in the wild. Like everybody, are experiencing issues when you get enough data. Like it's so different having just a little bit of data and then like medium data and then like a lot of data. But it seems like problems already surface when you have like a medium. Monica was referencing that she had to pay like $300. I can't remember the number because she was deleting some data that she wasn't really, conscious. They were like, oh, we can delete that. We don't need it anymore. And suddenly it was like, you get a cloud bill for like, because you're deleting so much data. And I'm, just working on like a little side project. You're like deleting and updating it. Like, I mean, even with 1,000 users, you're like, but when you start getting into it and you just want, I just want to summarize a little, and you're like, yeah, no.
Yeah, and I think what's also counterintuitive there is like in university and when you learn like database design, they keep telling you like you have to use normal form and like keep data separate and like this belongs there and that belongs over there and don't mix them in each other and like don't cache stuff, and that's all good advice. But at some point, it doesn't work that way anymore, and you have to specifically break those good habits that you've been trained to use just to keep things performant and like just keep. Yeah, but I mean, the thing I'm building right now is basically the opposite of that. And to keep things fast, we have to do it that way because then the normal form version just doesn't scale. So. Yeah, that's an interesting learning from the last couple of weeks, that the things that you consider the proper way to do it isn't necessarily the fast way to do it.
I feel like that's not only with databases, it's also kind of with code where, we had for a long time, the thing was very like strict rules around how you wanted to separate, your front end code and your back end code. And like those paradigms are also changing now, where suddenly you have your back end code and your front end code in the same file sometimes. And yes, it depends, it's separation of concerns, but then you're like, what concern? Is the feature the concern, or is, the layer the concern, or, and we don't have to, decide on which one is best right now. But it feels like some of these things that we learn, especially in university, even outside of databases, doesn't really hack it when you're actually out there and doing production code.
Yeah, and I think
sometimes
this thing where software development is all about trade-offs really comes into play, like where you suddenly have to choose between the design pattern that you're used to, or like the proper way to doing it, to keeping it fast or making it scale, or getting it done now instead of in a week from now, and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a lot about trade-offs.
And also taking into consideration that multiple people are working on it, depending on, you started out with only you and now you're two developers, I guess. But suddenly when you're 30 developers, there are some patterns that are kind of sound, like this is the way you should be doing it. But when you have more people, you also need them to be able to, do their work and get going. And if that means like everybody having to like, go to the same point of source of truth all the time, we're just going to be stepping on each other's toes all the time. And then maybe it's better if they, if as with a database that you have that truth to places, or like not a truth, but so it's not always about the technical choices either. It's about the organization in addition to what is technically correct, like textbook correct.
Textbook correct, yeah. But again, on the flip side, I mean, the stuff we learn in textbooks and like proper way of doing it and separation of concerns, get more important when you're working with a team, right? Because suddenly, if there's just one place where the truth is stored, that's easy to know, right? Then everyone agrees that this is the place we check. But once you start spreading it out for whatever reason into like multiple buckets, or I don't know, then suddenly it's not that obvious anymore. And I think it's easier to confuse people on the team and like make it harder to collaborate because it's not clear what the right way of doing things is anymore. So yeah, that's an argument, like, again, trade-offs.
But then also just people, like, they're, you know, people are also part of the thing. It's not
true. Yeah.
It's not like one person with the tech, like, creating a perfect something, you know, making all the decisions. And then, then people come into consideration. And people are hard.
Then the thing with building projects in isolation and then the project getting the first user and suddenly half of your assumptions are no longer true. Like a product can only be perfect if no one's using it, I guess.
But is it then the product?
Then it probably isn't a product, yeah. True.
You know, then it is content, I would say. Because you could make a video about how to do it, but then it's not a product until somebody's actually using it.
Maybe. But then you record a second video and realize that what you did in the first video was actually the wrong thing for the thing you want to do in the second video. I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's true. Anyway, let's wrap it up.
Yes.
Because now I'm getting into
rambling mode, right?
I can like ramble for another hour if we keep this up.
Well, it was a fun conversation.
And I just want to shout out to Toril, who's in our chat of the live recording. It's a friend of mine.
Nice.
From Norway.
Cool. Yeah. We finally have someone actually watching the live recording as we record. That's pretty cool.
She's actually the person that organizes the I plan my week every Monday with this group of people. I think I've mentioned it. And she's the one that organizes our planning session and then our retrospective, I guess, on Friday, and then also some focus sessions during the week. So we all get our shit done.
Nice. Very cool.
Yep.
Well, then, you want to say something else?
I was just going to say, see you around the interwebs.
Yes, see you around the interwebs.